We are heading into April. What do they say about March? April showers bring May flowers, right?
But what do May flowers bring? That's, I think, the saying.
I don't know. What do they bring?
I don't know. I don't know if there's any.
They just like cut off the poem. It's like, that's the end. Open-ended poem. That's what we got. April's a big month. You're traveling a lot. I'm traveling. We're excited.
Yep. I'm traveling in the very beginning of April. So we are leaving on Monday. We just got home from Mexico. And we're leaving on Monday for Carson's spring break trip to visit my parents who are in Naples. Yeah. So it's nice because it's a lowered cost vacation because we're staying with my parents.
And Mexico was free for you guys.
Mexico was free other than the cost of my passport that needed to be expedited. So it was like $260.
That's fine.
Still a pretty cheap Mexico trip, $260. Yeah. So the one downside is because of how expensive flights are around spring break time for the entire family.
That's right.
We have to fly connecting both ways, which typically I avoid like the plague, especially when I am with my children.
Yep.
Because we had the worst possible travel experience ever with connecting flights a couple years ago.
I remember you like running out of milk for Taylor or something.
Yeah, Taylor was still, she wasn't breastfeeding, but I was still had her on, like, she was still taking bottles.
Yeah.
Because her and I didn't get along with the breastfeeding journey. I produced fine for Carson and like I was producing okay. Taylor just would scream at my boob, which was super fun. So I was exclusively pumping, but I think this was around 6 months or 7 months. So like she was starting to eat some food, but she couldn't sustain on food.
Right.
And we, our first flight out of Florida was at like 8 a.m. or 7:15. So we got up at 4 a.m., got to the airport. The flight was delayed for 2.5 hours. And then we connected in Baltimore. And when we got to Baltimore, the connecting flight to Chicago was canceled. And they were like, sorry, we can't do anything. When do you want to rebook in 2 days? And I was like, not the right answer. So we ended up having to take another connecting flight from Baltimore to Cleveland and then Cleveland to Chicago. But we had to fly into Midway when we had flown out of O'Hare where our car was.
Oh my gosh. So
we landed at like 10 p.m. at Midway. Midway, for you that don't know, is about an hour plus to O'Hare. So our brother-in-law picked us up at Midway and drove us to our car at O'Hare. But when we got to Cleveland, the connecting flight, there were no restaurants open. So we had to like sustain on vending machines.
Oh my God.
I had just enough formula to get Taylor like to where we needed to go. And I had her eat some, there was like a vending machine. Luckily, there was a healthier one that had like a yogurt parfait. So I was able to give her, some yogurt, which was easy. But we got home at like 11 p.m. midnight and we had woken up at 4 a.m. and we're traveling literally the entire day. It was miserable.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, knock on wood, it's better this time. Flights are crazy. So we're leaving on the 6th, which is just some people's spring break, but also like right after. Anyways, we never fly Spirit. We had a horrible experience. And honestly, it's just not like the top of the line airline. So, but they had a 6 a.m. flight out. And I was like, yeah, I want to maximize my time. We're going for our anniversary. So we have 4 days there. I'm like, we'll take it. That's fine. I'll get up at 3:30. We will get to the airport. So if you guys don't know this about Spirit, if you are not there when they close the doors, like whatever it is, it was like an obscene amount of time. It's like 45 minutes before departure. They closed the doors.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So we're like, we got stuck in security behind a mom that had formula and her bottles and everything. And we were like, oh my God. So we're like running down the runway. They shut the door like as we're like, no. And they wouldn't open it. And we were like 45. We didn't know this rule about 45 minutes before. I don't know if it's like still a thing. This was probably 7 years ago now. But anyways, we're getting there much earlier than like we normally would leave our house 2 hours prior. Cause like we have TSA, whatever. We're not checking bags either. We will leave 2.5 hours early. Cause like, I'm not risking that. And it's a 6 a.m. flight and I want to be in Mexico at 10:30 a.m. So anyways, we are here today.
Talking about stress. Let's talk about some real stress and when stress leaves. Because this is something that I've talked to a lot of people around because we'll make a lot of my reels are around stress and the adrenal function and the impact of stress on hormones in the body. And so many people are like, well, I had this stressor or this impact years ago, but like I don't have it anymore, but they're still dealing with all the symptoms.
Yeah.
And we want to talk today about how even though the stressor may be gone, whether the stressor was a divorce or childhood trauma or a vaccine or a mono or COVID or whatever it might be, the effect that that stressor ultimately has on the body long term. And just because the stressor's gone doesn't mean the impact and the need for healing from that stressor is gone.
Yeah. And I think that when we're talking about this, I want to lump in here some big T's and little T's. So kind of big trauma versus little trauma. I think everybody deals with stress and trauma differently. Like I will tell you, I compartmentalize things. And recently our mentor was like, I need you to write down a list of things that like you have resentment against. And I was like, well, I only need one line for this one. Right. And I know that those are things that I need to take care of. It's not a Pandora's box that I've been ready to open yet. And even though on the surface, like, yeah, everything is cool, like the bodies, like the cells, like, and for this situation, it's someone in my life who is close to me, but also there's a lot of resentment there. And so anytime that like there's a phone call, it's just automatically a stressor. And like, I can feel it in my body. So that might be a sibling. It might be a parent. It might be a cousin. It might be, a job that you're in. It doesn't have to be this like traumatic event that happens. I think it can be a very strained relationship. So just keep that in mind as we kind of go through this, because I think a lot of people either compartmentalize, think that they got it under control and, they don't, or they don't realize that it is something that is subconsciously playing a role in their behaviors. So I will just share that this is my dad. And he's a great dad. There's never been any abuse, anything like that. It's just a very different relationship than I had with my mom. And she's gone. And I've had a lot of resentment and anger towards the fact that, like, why is she not here? And then dealing with the family dynamics that are, and somebody who's very stubborn and will not change their ways. It creates a lot of stress for me. And the same thing with my siblings. Like, we're all talking about this. Like, how do we work through this? Like, we all need to go to therapy. We know it, but we just haven't done it yet. And again, on the surface, he's a great dad, like Christian dad, raised in a faith church, but like, he's very unique in his ways, and it makes it very hard. And so there's not a good relationship in terms of like the connection piece. So I just want to give that preference, because I feel like if we can relate to the story and what I'm referencing here, you might be like, oh, okay, this could be something that's not like I got a car accident, I had a divorce, I had, a death or anything like that. It can be a multitude of things. It could be things that happened. We're both reading this book right now on leadership and talking about influence and people in your life that have influenced you. Like, I always go back to thinking about kids camp and my camp counselor, Nina, and how much she influenced me. And I randomly got to reconnect with her at the end of high school at a women's conference. And like, she's somebody that I will always remember that influence. And so there might be something in your life that was small, a comment someone said to you, a teacher. Like, we hear a lot, and like a lot of people write about this in books, like they had a teacher that really believed in them, that really changed the trajectory of their life, but it could also be opposite. So I just wanted to set the precedence here, because I don't want us to just think like, I'm going to shut this podcast off because I don't have any big crazy traumas that have ever happened to me. This could also be little traumas too.
Yeah, absolutely. And understand that it can be a kind of compounding effect of those little traumas over time. And a lot of people downplay what has happened to them. And because it's not sexual abuse as a child, or, physical abuse from a partner, or something that's really extreme, we're like, no, I haven't been through that much. And then you think back, like, I know for myself, I've been in verbally abusive relationships that aren't like my partner, and, intimate relationships that I downplay. And when I think back on it, I'm like, yeah, huge trauma that I've been through. But when you are in that moment, especially as a child, if you dealt with anything as a child, like, you don't have the coping mechanisms developed at that time in life to truly deal with it ultimately. Like, and it gets stored in the brain, and these types of traumas essentially change how your memories and your brain waves function. Like, imagine tire tracks in snow that get so ingrained, and trying to move off those tire tracks, right? Years of those tire tracks. Like, you have to basically rewire how the brain functions, which is not an easy feat. And we want to talk also about kind of the more physiological things that start to happen with this fight or flight, right? And this stress response that happens because when you initially, and a body that maybe has an accumulated stressor over time, when you initially get exposed to a stress, the sympathetic nervous system's like on the scene, right? And it reacts well. And it typically increases adrenaline and noradrenaline, blood pressure goes up, heart rate goes up, breathing rate goes up. And then it takes about 20 minutes for the body to kind of return back to homeostasis after that stressor is gone. And so, anyone that's been through severe trauma, PTSD, people that have been in extreme violent situations, you probably have triggers and we know that. We've seen that with research. And even if you're not in the environment anymore, but you hear a loud sound or you hear the dropping of something, or, you're exposed to a smell or a person or an environment that replicates that, that your body physiologically reverts back to those states, right? That rapid heartbeat, the flushed skin, your dilated pupils, trembling, shaking, right? And we'll see this too, and there's a lot of people on social media too that talk about if you're someone that you hear a pin, you hear something drop, you hear a loud noise and you jump, you get startled, you're probably in a place where there's some unresolved traumas. There's some things that sympathetic nervous system is still super active and very reactive to what's going on. And so understand that even though the stressor may be gone, or even though, it might have been a really long time ago that you experienced things, the impact of that, if we have not specifically taken time to mentally and emotionally handle it and deal with those things and recover from those things, your body is still dealing with the effects of it. And we see that not only with reactions to stressors, but physical symptoms that start to happen and things that cortisol will start to affect when it's been chronically elevated for a really long time.
Yeah. And when we think about cortisol and the adrenals, the body is meant to go through stressful times. We're meant to react, right? A car is going to hit you. You're meant to jump out of the way or swerve out of the way or whatever. But then you're also meant to calm down. And the issue here is that while you, like Becca is saying, that the stressor is gone and while you feel okay, we're good, maybe your cells don't feel that way and your body doesn't feel that way. There's a good book. It's kind of a hard read. I'm not going to lie to you, but it's called The Body Keeps Score. There's also the emotion code, the body code. There's a lot of different resources that kind of go into this. But when you have this underlying stressor that's driving your cortisol high, your body can only keep up for so long. And then the tank runs out, right? You can have a gas tank that is full and pedaled to the metal, eventually you're going to run out of gas. And so we'll see this a lot where people who've been in this state for a long time, their metabolized cortisol just tanks. So what do these symptoms look like when we're going through this? Fatigue. You're burnt out, low energy, right? You're not thinking clearly. You're maybe getting headaches more often. You could have a lot of digestive issues. This could be both constipation or diarrhea, upset stomach, abdominal pain, nausea. The body is not focusing on rest and digest, and therefore digestion is not a main priority. The main priority is the body to keep you surviving, right? And fight or flight. And so we get into this freeze state, as we call it. Digestion's definitely going to take a big hit. What we're going to see with that is inflammation, infections, right? What does this inflammation cause? Aches, pains, joint pain, right? Rapid heartbeat, anxiety, depression. You're clenching your jaw, you're grinding your teeth. I love Dr. Lindsay, I think it's Schmidt on Instagram. She has, and this resonates with me. I think about it all the time, even to this day. When I go to bed at night, the T-Rex hands where you curl in, I definitely do that. And I'm okay, just relax. I'm good. I'm chill. We can talk about the morning routine and running fire drills with 2 kids in the morning and why are we stressed out? But, when we're thinking about this long-term unaddressed things, we can also see illness that's persistent. So you have frequent colds or infections, UTIs, it can be yeast infections, chronic sinus infections, a variety of things there. You have no libido. Hormones have probably also bottomed out. You might also start to experience symptoms here, and some of this is related to low hormones, especially low estrogen, where you have ringing in the ears, cold or sweaty hands or feet, dry mouth, hard time swallowing, and insomnia. And you might say like some of those resonate, not all of them. They don't all have to resonate. Again, your body is meant to thrive and keep you alive. This is not an exhaustive list, but it is something. And we have this conversation with our clients, especially when we see these symptoms and they're testing. We're like, what else is going on here? Because we can do a lot of work with diet and lifestyle, habits, behaviors. However, if they're not willing to recognize that stress is impacting them, they will not get better fully.
Yeah.
They will really struggle to heal. It will take a really, really long time. And I think with all of this, having that higher power and, praying, like I talked about this morning on my social media, getting out of the house feels like a fire drill to me right now. And by that, I mean, I have said to my son 100,000 times what time it is. We have, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. We give him all the countdowns and I lay out your clothes. I need you to do this. And he's just some days not there, not listening, And so it's so frustrating to me because like, I don't want to be late. I feel that all these symptoms, of adrenaline pumping through and you're frustrated and everything. So as soon as I dropped him off, I was like, okay, I got to do some deep breathing here. I got to shift my state. And we talk in the car and have fun and listen to music and that helps. But then I'll put on like Christian music and I'll get into more of like a calm state, like intentionally. And I think that without having this knowledge, people aren't intentionally trying to shift their state. So on one hand, there's all this work that needs to be done, maybe in terms of handling and addressing trauma. And this might look like intensive therapies for some people, right? Emotional releasing techniques. There's a lot of things that you could do there, talk therapy, whatever. But on the other hand, there's a lot that you can do within your day to shift the state and to really like mentally tell yourself, I'm good. I'm calm. We made it to school on time. Like the fire drill is over. Everyone survived. Those types of things. But a lot of people don't do that. Instead, what they do is they let that rush them through the rest of their day and they stay in that high adrenaline, high cortisol state until they can't.
Yeah. And something that I was thinking about is a lot of times people may not have the thought that I've been through anything really stressful, but even chronic states of underfeeding, overexercising, pregnancy and postpartum, you guys, those things are huge stressors to the body when done for long periods of time. And they also leave the body in a really large state of deficiency in terms of nutrients, the inflammation levels that can start to happen because that cortisol running basically 110% for a really long period of time. Cortisol is great and anti-inflammatory in proper amounts, and then it becomes inflammatory. And then the body stops listening to it, essentially. And so the long-term effects on top of, yes, a lot of those symptoms, I think of major ones we see are nutrient deficiencies. Mm-hmm. Like people that have been under chronic stress, when we look at blood work, we're showing low levels of everything. Low stomach acid, because stress will blunt stomach acid production. We see a lot of times low total protein, low alkaline phosphatase, low bun levels, low creatinine levels. Like CBC panel shows a ton of anemia indications. White blood cells are really off. Either they're depleted because the body has been chronically stressed. And like Liz mentioned, that getting sick more often, like it starts to deplete your immune system because your immune system gets called when there's stress, when there's some type of stressor to the system. And that stress might be emotional, mental. It might not be an infection, but then the immune system gets really depleted. And so we end up with these nutrient deficiencies, a lot of times leaky gut starts to happen. And so even though the stressor is gone, guess what? We still have this environment where the gut needs repair. We need to replenish the nutrients that we've lost. The cell danger response that's going on has accumulated inflammation, right? All of these pieces are lasting effects. And so, yes, you may not be in the stressor anymore. You may not even feel major stress, but you're experiencing symptoms, right? And so those symptoms oftentimes don't get better on their own. Like they need a period of time that is acute care. I think of like a malnourished child, right? You're not just going to feed them normal. You're going to feed them more than they need in terms of nutrients and vitamins and minerals to get them back up to a homeostasis level as fast as possible. That's why we run our cleanse plan initially, because we know a lot of the people coming in are depleted.
Well, it's also why we start with blood work first, because I need to see what this person needs. Like a lot of the symptoms that we mentioned here can be signs of high or low adrenals. And when we know that we're cranking and we're really high with adrenals, we also need to use the tools to slow that down, right? And this is where blood work can be so invaluable. We have a lot of clients who do just like lab work reviews with us. And I'm like, okay, let me read this pattern and trend to you. And you tell me if this correlates with your symptoms. Like, I don't even need to see their symptoms to know sometimes like this is what they're dealing with, which is very frustrating. Conventional medicine doesn't even look at your labs, right? So that's why so if you guys listen to the podcast, you've probably heard us say this, but we do offer blood work as a one-off, like standalone test, and then review and interpretation with a practitioner on our team so that we can walk you through, here's what we're seeing in terms of the functional ranges. So optimal is not normal. And I have all the time people telling me, well, my labs are normal. Okay, great. But you just told me that you have a laundry list of symptoms that you're struggling with. So why are we accepting this as normal? And again, a lot of it is that people don't know that there's one, a way to feel good and that these symptoms aren't normal, but two, they just don't know that these lab ranges continue to get wider and wider and that we're comparing it to a diseased population. So, we have to use discernment and wisdom here and not try to just like grab at things because you don't want to make things worse. But when we really think about how we get into this calm state and start to release some of these things, we have to recognize that the body doesn't know the difference between an emotional stressor and a physical stressor. And so within all of this, it might be a surgery that you had that was like, hey, a routine surgery, right? I can't think of one off the top of my head, but for example, I'll use myself.
An injury, sprained ankle,
Achilles tear like you had. I had, I was hit head on by a drunk driver when I was 16. So I had surgery in my, knee area. By the way, the ER doctor was so cute. Just remember that. It's like the silver lining in that whole situation. But, you think about that too, like this physical damage that's been done and then all those other emotional things. And the reality is, guys, like we're all kind of emotionally messed up in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. We have outside of like, I was listening to something several years ago, I was talking about like parenting and how we're all going to mess our kids up. Just try to do your best. And, I was like, oh, I'm messing my kid up every day. But this is why, again, tapping into that higher power, like prayer, meditation, getting into, a group, surrounding yourself with other people, being vulnerable, being honest about like, I don't have it all together all the time. And I remember Rebecca used to say, like, I feel like I'm dropping balls, everywhere. And I'm like, oh yeah, that feeling for sure. Or you just have to let some things go. And you learn that over time, like with wisdom and whatnot. But what we're saying here is that we have to recalibrate the system, right? Like sometimes this built-in alarm system is really overzealous and we got to like woo-saw it and bring it down. So there's a lot of things you can do. Again, I think somatic therapy is another great one. We haven't mentioned that yet, but there's like somatic workouts that you can do. You could start or end your workout with a somatic workout, which is basically just like different poses and, breathing. I think mantras can be very good. So if you're getting into meditation, formulating some mantras there. We actually talked recently, we were podcasting with Mike Searock and he's like, what do you think about chewing your food? And I was like, yeah, well, eating hygiene. He's like, well, what about gratitude and setting intention with your meal? I'm like 1,000%.
Yeah.
Because so many people struggle with maybe, having these digestive issues and then they fear all these foods and it's not the food's fault. It's that everything internally is just so overzealous that we got to get calmed down and we got to recognize that this can actually nourish us and be beneficial for us and not harm us. So I love, for me, breathing. People do these breathwork sessions. I've yet to do one-on-one, to be honest with you.
They're intense.
Becca has done them. They're very intense. I like it because I have it with me at all times. So like, again, this morning after drop off, I did some breathing, just 4 in, hold, 4 out, 4, hold, right? So this box breathing, you can do things like that. You can move in ways that make you just feel good. Go for a walk outside in sunshine. I love that. You can dance. You can, just be silly, hop around your house, whatever. I think that finding joy in these times is also just really beneficial. And that can be anything that serves you in terms of cooking, again, singing, laughing, watch a comedy, play a game, get some adult coloring out, whatever that looks like for you. And then utilize resources, utilize experts, especially if this is something that you can pinpoint, like, you know what, you guys nailed it. I do have these things that I need to address and I don't want to. Then start to look at what does that look like for you. I know for kiddos, one of my clients, Juliet, she's a play therapist. love a lot of the things that she shared, even as I've reached out to her for, things with Marcus. And one thing that she said to me, and I think that this is really important, not just for littles, but also for adults. We were talking about how he was like getting frustrated and like just like growling at me essentially and like clenching his fist. And I'm like, what are you doing? And then I would ask these questions. She's like, don't ask questions, because he doesn't know the answer. He doesn't know what these emotions are. She's like, do you know what your emotions are? And I was like, no. I mean, I can say I get frustrated, but also when you look at, so we got this book, it's like a box of emotions. It's the emotions detective. When we went through all these different ones, we could be feeling multiple emotions at the same time, right? Like I can feel sad, I can feel angry, I can feel frustrated, I can feel all these at one time, but I wouldn't know how to formulate that, especially if I was 5. And so she's like, ask yourself when you have these times, what you're feeling. Like, how many emotions are you feeling at once? Because we do. And so then really starting to dissect that and use that there. And then I think reframing is really, really important. So when you're in these times that you feel like, I'm never going to get better, the weight's never going to come off, this situation's never going to resolve, that person is such a pain in my side, right? Whatever colorful words and feelings that you might have there, how can you start to reframe it? That is something that I have found really helpful in a lot of situations, but especially when you're maybe dealing with somebody that you do love, but is just very frustrating to you. It's like trying to constantly reframe and try to understand, like, there's a reason that these things are happening. There's a reason the way that they're acting might be, and don't take it so personal. Yeah. Because if you take it personal and you stuff it, then it just makes it worse.
Yeah. And I think the last thing is evaluate your day-to-day routines, because a lot of the thoughts that you have are very subconscious, like we've been talking about. I believe it's 95% of the thoughts you have in a day are the same thoughts that you had the day prior. And so shifting up your routine and, like Liz was saying, that morning time, starting your day in a positive mindset, because it's so easy to wake up and be like, oh, I have so much to do today. I'm already stressed. Opening up my email, whatever it might be, or my kids stress me out as soon as I wake up. So having that first piece of the day be when you also have like your most discipline, usually, the mantras, the gratitude journaling, those deep breathing, like whatever it needs to be that you feel is impactful at that time. And then the rest of your day, having little reminders in that remind you of what you did, whether it's carrying around your gratitude journal and like needing to open it up and read it sometimes, or flip back pages and read what you were grateful for, 2-3 weeks ago. For me, the mantras I kind of either keep as like the background of my phone, or I'll have them as a Post-it on my desk. In between calls, we deal with a lot of chronic health issue clients and people that, it is emotionally taxing working with our clients in a lot of ways, because we take on what they feel and what, we want for them. And sometimes there's ups and downs to the journey. And so in between calls, I'll have to take 5 big deep breaths to just calm myself, get up and go for a walk around the block, right? Having to disrupt your normal routine in your normal day and find ways to start to shift those ingrained pathways in the brain. And our thoughts are so dependent on our awareness. And if you don't have awareness, the thoughts are going to remain. And so it has to create awareness first. And doing this work is not easy. And a lot of times it feels worse at first, because you have to basically face those really messed up thoughts, that we have created, the stories that we have created. And the analogy that I've given before that I love, I took from Layla Hormone, is she talks about her emotions and her thoughts are like books on a shelf. And it's what books you're deciding to read, right? Because they are just thoughts and emotions. They are fleeting. They are dependent on what we experience. And so they are not necessarily directions to what your actions should be, right? Or how your life should be lived. And so you can choose to have different thoughts and emotions. It just takes practice, like everything else that we do in our day-to-day. So yes, there may be reactive thoughts to things, but they don't necessarily have to drive your actions then. So the awareness piece, I think, is huge. And also just being kind and patient to yourself, because you've been through a lot. All of us have. Like where we are at today is a culmination of all the shit we've been through in our life. And I think that a lot of us downplay that. And we expect our bodies to just flip on a dime when we have been through traumas and physical stressors and emotional stressors And the older we get, the more they just accumulate, right? And so if you haven't spent time and you're in your 40s or 50s and you're just now visiting, like all of the effects that has driven, we got some work to do, and that's okay. But don't downplay the effects that stress can have, even if the stress isn't there anymore. Like, the body keeps score, like we said. So give it grace, give it time, but also have awareness to start changing the things that have maybe created the environment that you're now in.